Hello and thank you for joining us on World Now on TVC News. I am Abosede Adeniwa. The United States and Ukraine have signed an economic partnership deal that the U.S. hopes will ensure the recovery of the nation from the impact of its war with Russia. Critical minerals and a strategic investment in Ukraine's future form the heart of the deal. Let's take a look at this deal.
After months of tension-soaked efforts to reach a peace deal, the United States and Ukraine have finalized an economic partnership that gives Washington access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals in exchange for U.S. investment in the war-torn country. The deal was sealed just days after President Donald Trump met with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the sideline of Pope Francis's funeral in Rome. President Trump says the agreement is designed to protect America's $123 billion commitment to Ukraine since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022 and to ensure returns beyond the $350 billion figure widely cited.
Just to put that in perspective, though, when I came here, I said, how much money have we given to Ukraine? The real number is about $350 billion. It's unthinkable. And we had no security, we had no nothing. We were just pouring money there, unsecured money, putting it in banks, and anybody could have taken it out. Anybody over there, it was their decision. I've never seen anything like it. Europe, on the other hand, which is obviously that whole situation is much more important to Europe because we have an ocean in between, but Europe gave about $100 billion. It's a lot of money. It's a big sacrifice they made also. But they gave much less than we did. And their money is secured, totally secured, by deposits in banks. The deposits are largely Russian deposits. That's what Europe did. But their money is secured. So they gave $100 billion totally secured. We gave money like it's throwing it out the window. And it was done by Biden. And this is Biden's war. More than the money, they're losing about 5,000 young Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week, mostly. There's some people also being killed in towns where missiles should not have been shot, small cities and towns. But we are trying to save the lives of about 5,000 young, mostly soldiers, that are losing their lives a week. I see satellite photos, probably off one of his satellites, come to think of it. But I see satellite photos every week of fields with arms and heads and legs scattered all over. It's a violent, violent, horrible situation.
The U.S. Treasury has confirmed the deal, calling it a signal of Washington's long-term commitment to a free and sovereign Ukraine.
Thanks to President Trump's tireless efforts to secure a lasting peace, I am glad to announce the signing of today's historic economic partnership agreement between the United States and Ukraine, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. This partnership allows the United States to invest alongside Ukraine to unlock Ukraine's growth assets, mobilize American talent, capital, and governance standards that will improve Ukraine's investment climate and accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. The Development Finance Corporation will participate and help to establish this fund in collaboration with the government of Ukraine. Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end.
Ukraine's Minister of the Economy, Yulia Sviridenko, did not sign the agreement in Washington without emphasizing clearly that Ukraine retains full control of its natural resources. The deal nearly fell apart just hours before the signing due to a last-minute disagreement over the documents. It was originally expected to be finalized during President Zelensky's visit to Washington in February, but that trip ended abruptly after a tense meeting at the White House. While the deal gives both sides what they have been pushing for, which is the U.S. access to critical minerals and Ukraine's control with new investments, it also marks a new chapter in the relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine.
Still on the war, Russian soldiers have reportedly caused another disaster in Ukraine's port city of Odessa, killing 2 persons and wounding 15 others. Attack drones flew directly into the apartments, exploding there. Fire broke out, leading to the intervention of heavy machinery and utility workers who arrived at the damaged buildings. The Russians allegedly started attacking the city of Odessa at midnight, deliberately launching their attack when people were already in bed. For more on the deal with the U.S. and the fever from the war in Ukraine, I have joining me from Melbourne in Australia, the CEO, 9 Communications Nigeria Limited, Obinna Ejaya. Good to have you join us, Mr. Ejaya. Finally, this minerals deal has been signed, between the U.S. and Ukraine. But would you really call it a win for Ukraine?
Obviously, it's my pleasure to join this program, and it's always my pleasure to send my contributions orally to my dear country, Nigeria. I always like to contribute, and it's always my pleasure when I'm invited to, participate in this kind of show. So, responding to your question, it's not a win for Ukraine, rather, it's a loss. It's a colossal loss for Ukraine, but they are helpless, so they have to accept it.
And to think that they were running to the U.S. for help because Volodymyr Zelensky optimally thought that, okay, partnering the U.S. could get Russia committed to ending the war. So where does this leave Ukraine?
It left Ukraine devastated. It left Ukraine alone and desperate for help. And it's just like someone that is drowning. He could hold anything, any straw, whether strong or feeble. So that's what Ukraine is doing. And America being the most powerful country in the world, they're still hoping that U.S. will help them out, at least to secure peace in the country.
When discussions were on for this deal, Ukraine had made a proposition for security guarantees from the U.S. as a condition that would make it sign that deal. But does it seem it got any security guarantees, considering the renewed hostilities, especially in the Odessa region midnight?
It doesn't guarantee any security for Ukraine. It just, like I said, Ukraine is desperate for a help. And therefore, they could hold anything that they feel can help them. And U.S., you must understand the perspective of Mr. Trump, this current president of the U.S. He has nothing in mind except USA, USA, USA. So it's everything about the good of U.S., the win of U.S. So whatever is throwing on the table for Zelensky, if you look at it, it could be just a minor beneficial interest for Ukraine.
So how do we get to the root of this war? How do we end the war? Because that is what has brought Ukraine to this point, seeking redemption, seeking salvation, seeking security for its citizens. How do we achieve that if these shelling and hostilities continue within its territory?
Yeah, obviously, there is at least 90% chance, possibility that the war will come to an end by U.S. involvement, because you must understand that Trump personally is an ally to the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. They have been long-time allies, even though officially they seem to be foes. So Trump wouldn't have said from inception that he will end the war if he didn't have an assurance. He knows that he can end the war, but as you have seen, what is on the table for Ukraine is a lost game. But peace is but what they want for now.
Indeed, peace is what they want, and I believe it's what the world wants also for Ukraine. But I'm just thinking, about how feasible this peace is, because still about this deal, when it was being debated, Ukraine had made it clear that its territories belong to it. Meanwhile, Russia is claiming that whatever territories it claims to have seized from Ukraine now ceases to be Ukraine's. It's now Russian. So I'm just wondering if you think that it's really possible for these countries to come to the middle ground and really, agree on these matters.
Yeah, Ukraine has no much option than to cede those territories to Russia. And how pathetic it might be, the areas that Russia is annexing, they are the major areas that host the natural resources that you have in Ukraine, in the eastern Ukraine. That's where most of the natural resources are deposited. So, but like I said, Ukraine has seen that they are lonely, they are left alone, they are deserted. The promise made to them by the NATO organization and the EU have not been met. And it seems like Zelensky was lured into this war by US and the West. So, but when the war started, as you can see, when the war started, the trajectory of US support was that of giving a child a fish other than teaching him how to fish. So they've never, accepted to give Ukraine enough military ways that could stand that of Russia. As you can see, if you watch the trajectory of their help, hasn't been substantial enough to stand Russia. So, and that was a very, very disappointing level.
All right. And even if the U.S. gave Ukraine, as many words as they required, the concern would be, would they be able to use those military equipment within Russian territory? It's been a pleasure speaking with you, CEO, Nine Communications Nigeria Limited, Obinna Ejiayan. Thank you very much for your time on World Now.
You're welcome.